Well, US President Donald Trump says the Second Lady and other diplomats have been invited to Greenland. Several senior politicians in the self-governed Danish territory have condemned this week's planned visit by Usha Vance, the wife of Vice President J.D. Vance. Professor Matt Vortrup is a senior research fellow at the ANU Center for European Studies, and he joins me now from London. Matt, good to have you with us again. Now, firstly, can you clarify for us what's happened here? Did the U.S. delegation, led by Usha Vance, even notify Greenland that they were coming, or did they simply say, look, we're on a flight, we're on our way?
Well, they announced about a week ago that they were coming to Greenland to watch a dog sleigh race, which some people in Greenland have paid for, really, just to get them there. And the government in Greenland, they've just had the election, so they are in the process of forming a government. It's a proportional system, so they haven't formed a government. They just announced that they were coming. And then the Danish government so Greenland is effectively a state and Denmark is effectively a federation. So the government in Copenhagen, which is in charge of the police, have sent 90 police officers to Greenland for protection. And a lot of people in the Danish parliament who says that the Americans should pay for that. And then the incoming Prime Minister, Mr. Nielsen, is saying that he finds it rather astonishing that they are coming at a time, uninvited, at a time when Greenland only has it's the outgoing government that's still in charge. Moot Egede, who is the outgoing Prime Minister, has condemned it. The incoming Prime Minister has condemned it. And 85% of the population in Greenland say they don't want to have anything to do with the purported American takeover. So it is quite a provocation. And also, as I was saying, Mr. Nielsen, the incoming Prime Minister, has said that it's rather astonishing that that they haven't been invited at all. There has been no invitation by anybody.
Yes, of course. The government and all sides of politics in Greenland, but also in Denmark, they've described this as aggressive, provocative, as you mentioned there. They seem to still be coming. So how awkward might this get when that delegation arrives?
Well, Denmark is a free and liberal country, possibly as opposed to where America might be going at the moment. People are free to come in. They would have to, there might be some visa requirements to come in. They can come and they can watch the dog sleigh race, and they will probably not meet with anybody. The government in Greenland is not going to meet with them. No local politician is going to meet with them. The municipal elections are coming up in Greenland next weekend, and that's where the focus will be on. So there might be a couple of Americans coming to Greenland, but that effectively is it. And I think the decision by the government and indeed the people of Greenland is mainly to ignore this. They will go to Pufvik in the northern part of Greenland to visit that. And in a way, that's probably almost more a provocation. That's a story that hasn't been told. Because 50 years ago, the Americans actually crashed a B-52 plane up there. The whole area was contaminated, and people from the local tribes had to be removed for fear of contamination and possibly even nuclear contamination. So the Americans have not covered themselves in glory, and by going to the airbase that the Americans already have there, they're basically rubbing salt into the wound.
Yes, and given how unpopular this visit is being and the angry responses both in Greenland and in Denmark, do you think Donald Trump might see this as a strong message for him to back off his plans to annex Greenland?
Well, I think what is so astonishing about all of this is that it doesn't seem to matter much. I mean, one is sort of reminded of when Saddam Hussein walked into Kuwait, and he wasn't particularly interested in what the Kuwaitians were saying about that. Now, in those days, we had an American president, George Herbert Walker Bush, who said this aggression will not stand. And now we see an American president effectively threatening to do the same. I don't think the Americans are particularly interested in what the people in Greenland think. He has referred to Greenland as ours, and in fact, it has been part of Denmark since 982. So that's a fair whack of time. And it's never been under, during the Second World War, it was under American control. There was a thing called the Kaufman Agreement. So the Danish ambassador to Washington, Mr. Kaufman, signed this memorandum with America that during the war, Greenland could be under American control, but they should be handed back afterwards. And part of the Kaufman memorandum in 1950, after the war, was that Greenland would allow the Americans to have an air base in Piftufik, which is in the north, that's the Aboriginal name, or Thule, which is the more common name. And the Americans have that, and it's these early warning systems for missiles coming in from Russia. So it's a very important air base. There's lots of Americans up there, and Americans already have a presence there. So it's difficult to see what you can argue with. And former Danish Prime Minister Anders Fogh Rasmussen, who himself is of Greenlandic descent, I should say, has said, well, you can probably negotiate things when it comes to an air base, even minerals. But if a president has got his design on territorial expansions, then that is very, very difficult. And that is very interesting when it comes from a liberal prime minister, a right-wing Danish prime minister, who is now criticizing America.
Yes, so do you think in that vein that the incoming new administration there in Greenland that's just been elected, how difficult a balancing act would it be for them because of that military base that is in Greenland?
Well, the military base is established on international law. The Americans have a right to have that. There are a number of stipulations on what they can do on that. For example, they can't bring in nuclear missiles. They can't bring in nuclear weapons. And they have probably done that in the past. That's not entirely clear. The Americans are not releasing the information about that. The Danish government is not doing that. But it's controversial with the airbase up there. But that's established that they have that. But it's very difficult to see what else can be done in this situation.
Okay, Professor Matt Waltrip, really good to get your thoughts.
Really awkward, yeah.
Yes, it will be very awkward indeed. Thank you so much for giving us your thoughts and analysis as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.